Right, enough silliness already, isn't it? Good morning. Well, good morning, Pimbatia time, and that's really the only time in the world that's important, isn't it? Pimbatia time. It's 9 a.m. on a Wednesday here, so if you're still in Tuesday, I'm speaking to you directly from the future. So I can tell you with 100% clarity that what's going to happen at 9 o'clock on Wednesday, Pimbatia time, is I will be joined by the very lovely Olivia, and she's going to tell us stuff and things about, first of all, where is your social media and stuff if people want to find you, follow you, etc. Give us a bit of your background, and then tell us what precipitated this live stream. Go for it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. So my social media, I'm on Instagram mostly, and it's Olivia Khwaja. Just use the spelling if you can see it. And yeah, we've been talking about this for a little while, so good to kind of talk about it properly and in live. Just so people know my background, I'm more from a business background before any of this nutrition world became, something I was part of. And what I do at the moment, though, is very much have gone on my own personal journey, changed my nutrition, going from quite high carb real food to lower carb to keto to carnivore, and that's been over the last kind of 5 years or so. And now I'm very much helping other people to do that. I look after a community on behalf of Dr. Anthony Chafee and help people in that community as well to move to carnivore, maintain carnivore, and we are packed with long-term carnivores in our community. So I do have a lot of experience of how they are getting along and what we tend to see. So I'll be speaking from that point of view as well as from the point of views of my own background, which is kind of commercial marketing strategy, social media, and all of kind of the business aspects that I can that I also use in this new world of growing nutrition messages. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Awesome. Right. So yeah. What precipitated this live stream? What's going on?
Well, I think you and I've been saying that there's been a bit of an attack on a set of attacks, I'd say, or certainly challenges, should I say, raised to the carnivore community and to this way of eating. And I would love to think that we can just ignore it and it can go away and we don't have to worry about it. We can go back to our little corners of the carnivore internet, but I do see quite a lot of people responding to it and kind of commenting, saying this is interesting. Should I be concerned? People asking about how they should now start measuring their cortisol. And so I do think there's times when, we can let these dramas just kind of wash on by, but there's other times where I think we do need to be a little bit clearer and resolute about, where we stand and what the real situation is, because I don't think it's right that people should be confused or unsure or lacking in any way in confidence in doing a carnivore diet, because we've seen it make such a big difference to so many people. So that's really what's kind of behind all of this. And I guess people are probably up to speed with some of the conversations and number of people that have come out and said that they are introducing carbs to their carnivore way of eating. And some people have been backing that up very categorically by saying that there are harms that come from not eating carbs and not including carbs. And I think that needs addressing. And I think we also need to say that maybe there's some other things going on as to why that is happening, because it does seem to be like quite a series of challenges, of attacks, of people coming out and saying this. So I think we can kind of talk through the science and what else might be happening that might be quite useful for people so they can discern between what's real and what may not be real on this in this crazy internet world that we talk about nutrition in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So with that being said, the title of this stream does name and shame a particular individual, one Zayn Griggs, who is currently, it seems, active at the forefront of this disinformation campaign that he's putting forward. Would you, Olivia, like to give us the rundown of what it is that Zayn Griggs has been saying specifically, and then we can get on to whether or not Zayn Griggs, number one, is remotely credible. Spoiler. Nope. And then we'll deal with the actual science as we understand it once we've dealt with what it is that Zane actually has been saying.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I actually have met Zane before and he was a very reasonable person. I was part of the filming for the animal documentary that he was involved in as a kind of a narrator, interviewer role. So I have had a conversation with him, haven't met him before, and thought he was a reasonable guy. And it's really only in the last kind of month or 2 months that I've noticed this very significant kind of 180 that he's taken. And that's fine to question things and to change your mind about nutrition. That's totally fine. But what he has started to come out and say is that if you are on carnivore in the long term, you will see that your cortisol is raised in a chronic way, which can lead to other issues and stress hormones, as he calls it, cortisol and adrenaline being stress hormones that are chronically elevated and cause weight gain and other issues. And that at the same time, there is this aspect of your body being stuck in a fat burning kind of mode, and then you're not able to utilize any glucose, and then your A1C goes up and your thyroid also gets damaged and your metabolism is a lot slower. So that's kind of the summary of what he says very consistently all the time, every day, as though it is going to happen to everybody. And that is a real misrepresentation, I think, of what the majority of people are experiencing, certainly in the community that I'm within and that I know of, many other carnivores that I know of. No one has had that issue. There have been other people that have come out in the space and said some things that have been, along the lines of the diet not working, but they don't actually match that theory that he's putting out there. So it doesn't really stack up. It's kind of a strange challenge to put to a number of people that are all thriving and doing really well, and all a little bit confused by where this has even come from. And I've got some views on that I'd like to share, but just in terms of what he's saying scientifically and like physiologically, he's claiming this kind of, I guess, the Ray Peat idea, right, of diets is that there is an issue with not having carbs in the long term. So it would be good for everyone to just be clear on whether or not that should be a concern or not.
Right, it would be awesome. A couple of things come to mind just as you're speaking there, Olivia, and there are a couple of things I'd like to put in my 2p worth, for what it's worth. Perhaps 2p, I don't know.
I'm sure it's a lot more.
You said like it's perfectly okay to change your mind about nutrition. I would like to submit as respectfully as possible that no, it isn't. That is not okay at all.
Depends if you were right or wrong in the first place.
That's my point, exactly, yes. My issue with people coming online and making videos and statements about nutrition and physiology and the science underpinning it such that it is, etc., my standpoint is, I don't care where you come from, what your background is, what your qualifications, credentials, whatever it is, my point is you should be right in the first place. Before you open your mouth publicly and make a statement, a professorial statement about this, that, or the other thing, whatever area you're talking about, first of all, make damn sure you're unassailable, make damn sure you are correct. That's what I've built my whole career on, both in academia previously and now as a social media influencer. My whole stock and trade is making sure that everything that comes out of my mouth of any value or meaning is correct the first time. Ergo, I never have to recant, go back, change my ways, or say I've changed my mind, because I didn't say anything that was wrong in the first place. And that's where I think 99.9% of the online influencers fall over. Oh, we're human beings and we're all learning. Well, perhaps do that in silence. Yeah. Until you actually have the background.
What would you do with yourself, Bart? What would you do with yourself if people weren't doing that, though?
Well, exactly. What would I do with myself? I don't know. Perhaps I'd get back to doing some farming or trying to be a farmer. Goodness. Be a farmer, they said. It'll be awesome, they said. Those that want to follow the farming exploits and the comedy around all of that should probably follow me on the Instagram, which is Bart_K_nutrition. It's hilarious. All sorts of things going on. Yesterday was a particularly busy day in Pimbatia. All sorts of things happened. But you can check that out after the live stream if you like. Right. So that's the first thing. No, it's not okay to change your mind about nutrition. Be correct in the first place. Okay? Secondly, in terms of the exact amount of correct interpretation of actual science that Zayn Griggs has been talking about, with everything he's been saying about carbs, cortisol, stress, the whole shooting box that's suddenly started to happen, as Olivia says, in the last few months, the exact amount of correct science, correct interpretation of science, correct valid information for people that is none. Zero. Zane is wrong. Completely, utterly wrong, which I'm happy to talk about the exactitudes of why. But let's do that after Olivia gives us her theory, disclaimed as her theory, as to exactly what it is that underpins not only Zane perhaps, but also a bunch of other social media influencers suddenly coming out with this ridiculous nonsense.
Well, so as I said, that my background is in marketing, and I also help people right now with social media and helping them grow social media. And when I did it as a marketeer in a big company, I had a very specific kind of role to also in my remit look after influencer marketing. So I know what influencer marketing is all about. And my opinion is that there is some funding behind certainly his efforts and maybe others too. And I base that on understanding how the model works and how the system works. What you will normally have is an industry, and I was, again, in that kind of role myself in an industry, where you would say, who were the right kind of influencers to get our message out there. So if we want to, for example, disrupt a particular part of people's theory of nutrition, what would be the best way to do it? Well, it's not going to be just to stick people in there and say, have these processed foods. It's going to be much more subtle than that. We have to be at the level of these people and how they think and how they respond to information. And we have to come up with something credible. So what's credible that someone may think, or sounds credible, if you like, that someone may think is a reasonable challenge to the carnivore diet. And this is one that has always been put to the carnivore diet and ketogenic diets before. Let's find someone who could adopt that thinking. And they will look for someone who's quite mainstream, people who are, kind of showing themselves in mainstream publications. He himself was on the cover of a fitness magazine. And so he'll be known in those types of circles. And what you would do is say, these are the kind of messages we'd like you to do. Please have this level of frequency of these messages, and we'll try and get this level of traction in terms of reach, in terms of people, kind of viewing it and eyeballs on it, and we'll help you along the way. And so I started to notice a little bit of that shift in his content, which went from being very normal, organic, speaking to the camera kind of updates to straight to more professional content in a very short space of time. And normally when someone is, because all people want to be better on social media, and that's fine, but when you're doing it yourself, normally you'll try one tactic and you'll see them do that quite a bit, and then a few months later they might try something else, and they will not normally in the space of 3 weeks try literally everything in the playbook that's going to get engagement up. So we have seen things like the frequency go to daily of reels. Someone is editing those reels. The reels are filmed by somebody like professional, because there is a hidden mic. He's topless a lot of the time. And the lighting is perfect, and he's got perfect sound. So that mic is somewhere like in his hair or something like that. I know how these things work. So you'll be doing all of that and setting it all up. You'll have a lot of filming in one day. You'll have various different scripts that you'll want to get through, and it will be very different to just talking to a camera. You'll be doing things like scene 1, open the fridge, and there's a phone inside, and you talk to the phone. Scene 2, sit at a table and show all the different meals on a plate. That is how you can get engagement up. That is what a playbook would be, that someone would come to you and say, try and do these types of things. We'll help you with it. And we'll fund some of it as well. And I'm seeing a lot of that. There's also this whole kind of like his as avatar, an AI avatar coming up as an overlay on the social media posts. Then you've got all the different new tactics, that like watching a video. Sean Baker does a bit of this as well. Watching a video while you do something else and like judging it. These are all coming thick and fast, like every single day, and only started like a few weeks ago. That for me is somebody who's up their social media and has had investment behind it, and someone helping them with the editing for sure. All of the hooks, all of the, don't have a dad bod at 55. I'm 55. Look, that's all hooks. That's very general playbook social media. What's your hook and how do you get people engaged? So for me, it looks very obvious. And I just don't think it's coming organically from him. I think there is more investment behind it, because it looks like the kind of thing I would have funded myself a few years ago. So yeah, that's my view at the moment.
All right. Sounds very good to me. Yeah, I mean, even people like me can see things like that on social media. Like, I'm always absolutely taken in every single time it happens, and it's 3 or 4 times a week, where some patently fit young bird is very, very interested in talking to me on social media. That happens all the time, 3 or 4 times a week at least. And I believe them every time.
Yeah.
You know, so when you see things that are, you know, things that walk like ducks, waddle like ducks, and quack like ducks are often ducks.
Yeah.
And sadly, it seems that Zayn Griggs has fallen foul of the old that stuff, frankly. Yeah. So good. No, I happen to agree. I think that that's exactly what's going on. I think that Zayn Griggs has become a shill for those with nefarious financial purposes to serve, and he's not the only one. There are a bunch of others that are jumping on the same bandwagon. Let's go through the science a bit, because the way in which the idea is constructed that a low carbohydrate diet is necessarily problematic in the long term for people might sound feasible, might sound believable to someone who is uninitiated in such things. So, I mean, we can sort of go through it a little bit point-wise, I guess, and perhaps, Olivia, you can keep me on track a bit as to making sure we hit all the points. But point number 1, fact. You ready? Fact. The exact requirement for exogenous carbohydrates in human beings, all human beings, including athletes, is not 1 single gram ever, period. So, requirement-wise, not 1 gram ever. Nobody requires carbohydrates. Your body has the capacity to manufacture all the carbohydrates required, of all the kinds required, itself from non-carbohydrate precursors. So that's fine. It's called gluconeogenesis. There are a number of substrates that are possible feeders into gluconeogenesis, and in order of their priority in so doing, in order of the way that this occurs in the human body, here are the facts. The most common precursor for gluconeogenesis is lactate. Simple as that. Okay, lactate is what you get when you split the sugar molecule in half using glycogenolysis, which mostly occurs in muscle fibers. That lactate is exported to the blood, where it returns to the liver, where it goes through a process of being resynthesized into glucose for recycling. That is the most common gluconeogenic precursor, lactate.
Where does that come from?
Where does what come from? The fact or the lactate? The lactate is produced directly by the enzymatic cleavage of a glucose molecule into 2 pyruvate molecules, which then become immediately reduced to lactate, pretty much. If it's not reduced to lactate and the pyruvate is oxidized, it gets oxidized to acetyl coenzyme A, which then is the first intermediary of the TCA tricarboxylic acid or Krebs cycle, whichever you want to call it. So sugar molecules split in half, 2 routes, oxidation through to CO2 plus H2O, with the concomitant production of ATP, or back to the liver, having been reduced to lactate, so it can be put back together as a glucose molecule. So that's the most
And so where would
common
that glucose
lactate.
come from? Where would that glucose
The glucose
come
in the
from
first place. The glucose in the first place is in the form of glycogen starch, mostly, which is stored in the skeletal muscles, mostly.
So from the glycogen, okay, yeah.
Yep. So glycogenolysis occurs, and that produces the lactate. That lactate then is used to produce glucose, which is then transported back to the muscle through the blood, absorbed through the sarcolemma of the muscle into that cell, and then resynthesized inside the cell to muscle glycogen again. Recycling. Fantastic. All right, so that's the most common. The second most common precursor for gluconeogenesis, if lactate is at a low level, for example, and you still need to produce glucose, it's glycerol. Glycerol is the backbone of fatty acid, triacylglycerol. It's usually just called triglyceride or TG. So TG, triglyceride, triacylglycerol, is a molecule with 3 fatty acid chains and a glycerol backbone. The glycerol backbone is used to produce sugar. That's the second most common gluconeogenic precursor. The third source of gluconeogenesis is there are a couple of gluconeogenic amino acids which can be derived from the breakdown of protein, or indeed from amino acids which are already in the bloodstream because they have been broken down by the digestive system and placed there recently. Okay, that's the third most and the use of protein for gluconeogenesis occurs pretty much only when there is no lactate to speak of and no glycerol to speak of in the bloodstream. It is an emergency, last-ditch thing that occurs. Zayn Griggs has been saying if you go on a low-carbohydrate diet, that's going to require gluconeogenesis because that's what happens, and that means you will break down muscle. Absolute nonsense, Zayn Griggs. Absolute rubbish. False. Secondly, he says, cortisol, though, a stress hormone, though. Okay, number one, cortisol is a hormone, yes, with multiple roles in the human body. Absolutely. It's a signaling molecule. It's a second messenger hormone-like thing. It is used to communicate between cells of the body as to various energetic states and all sorts of other states as well of various different tissues around the body. Fine. Who decided it was a stress hormone? One of the roles is that when you are stressed, cortisol is raised. Fine. That doesn't mean it is a stress hormone. That's just one of its roles. Secondly, if you're in a situation where your stress level is none, what is your situation in that case? Well, I'll tell you, you are dead. Because life is stressful. Stress is not a negative thing. Stress is the very thing that is adaptive and causes us to be able to cope with the fact that life is stressful. Stress is normal. What's abnormal is distress. Distress is chronic stress, which is never alleviated. How do you alleviate the stress, so-called, of being in a ketogenic state? Simple. You eat 2 grams of protein per kilo of lean body mass per day in one bolus. That'll do it. How does that work? Yep. Well, that releases a bunch of amino acids, some of which are gluconeogenic, as I said, and if there is an overplus of amino acids in the bloodstream, i.e. they're not needed to build proteins for body structures and whatever, there'll be no problem in using it for gluconeogenesis. That's what happens to some degree, which causes ketogenesis to ramp down for several hours while that happens, and then it ramps back up again, during which time everything resets. You get the insulin bump that you need to prevent the problems that Zane is talking about. Jobs are good in. There we go. You're welcome.
So a couple of like layman's people's questions, right?
Yes, please.
With the glycerol pathway, where do those fatty acids come from? Is that from a combination of your fat stores as well as something you could have eaten?
Yes, both.
And how does it prioritize between one or the other?
Okay, well, basically there are several hormones that dictate to the body whether it's building up or breaking down stored fat. So either we're storing fat into our adipose tissue cells, or we are breaking that down and releasing it to the bloodstream for use. There's no doing both at once, it seems, in the metabolism. It's a gearbox that has a forward gear and a reverse gear. Yeah. So you're doing either one or the other, and it seems to be the balance between insulin and glucagon that are the most important effectors or control levers of that particular situation. So the triacylglycerides or TGs or triglycerides that are in your blood are there either because you've absorbed them through the intestine because you've eaten some fat,
Yep.
or it's been released to your bloodstream from your adipose tissue, or some balance of both of those, because those things change minute by minute as to what your body's doing systemically. So yes, that's where the fat comes from, either of those two sources.
Right. Okay.
And
So
then,
you should never run out really of the fat. Like the chances of you actually entering the protein. What would need to happen?
it's the only time you're going to get a significant use of your hard-earned physical, body structures, protein-based structures like muscle, etc. The only time you're going to break down a significant amount of those to produce glucose is in a starvation state, in an advanced starvation state. Any normally functioning human being is not going to experience this. At the end of the day, each one of us is the absolute peak of the evolutionary process to this point, aren't we? Which is at least 3,800 million years. So in 3,800 million years of both positive and negative selection pressures, what Zayn Griggs is expecting you to believe is that the human metabolic system is so inane after that period of time that it would work so hard to gain protein, to build its structures and look after those structures, that the moment you turn off the supply of sugar, it's going to start dissolving that protein to make glucose when there is any fat whatsoever on the body for use for that process, the very thing that the fat is designed to do. It's absolutely the most ridiculous thing I have heard said by any so-called credible commentator, except LDL or saturated fat or any amount of the lipoproteins or fraction of the lipoproteins or any of the specific proteins involved cause heart disease, or that the earth is flat, or any of the other ridiculous things the other ridiculous lollipops we've been asked to suck recently, in recent years. So Zayn Griggs, you are an imbecile if you expect anybody with more than 3 minutes of exposure to understanding of human physiology that the moment you stop pouring sugar down your neck, you're going to start dissolving your muscles and release a bunch of cortisol, which will absolutely cause problems. Absolutely ridiculous from the ground
And
up.
just to be clear, the lactate pathway, the glycerol pathway, do they necessitate any increase in cortisol, or is it just the protein breakdown pathway if you get to it that does that?
Cortisol plays a role, an activating role, in various different ways, in various different metabolic pathways.
Mm-hmm.
The begging the question fallacy that Zane is making, Zane and others, I should say, is that having an elevated cortisol level is necessarily contraindicated, problematic, or will lead to other sequelae. No, your cortisol level is supposed to go up and down. Sometimes it's elevated above baseline because you have a gene set that's encoded that tells it to do that under certain circumstances. It's supposed to happen. What's not supposed to happen is your cortisol is not supposed to be elevated to a very high level chronically. And I've already given you the solution to prevent that. Eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet in an appropriate format, which, folks, ideally is 1 meal a day.
And people are we're not encouraging this at all, but people are coming through and saying things like, well, how do I get my cortisol measured? What would you say to that? Like, should you even be going in that direction? I would imagine not. Nope. But if you were to want to do it, is there a way to do it?
Well, you can get your cortisol tested at any given time point by taking a blood draw, and I'll give you a level of what the cortisol in your blood is at that time. If you want to understand what your cortisol is doing over time, you need a more consistent monitoring technique, which isn't really readily available to the general public. No one test of anything in your blood at any time will tell you anything worthwhile unless you are acutely unwell and the medics are trying to differentially confirm or refute a proposed diagnosis of what your problem is at that time. If you are fit and well and everything's going the way it should be, no one test of anything will tell you a damn thing. You need a time course, you need a series of repeated measurements over a time course to give you a trend. And you also need to record very carefully absolutely every input and output that could possibly affect that, so that you can actually start correlating X and Y. And then you need a mechanism as to what could be the problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's not worth testing, basically. I mean, unless
Not
you were
really.
going to go
No.
all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's also been my observation has been that, if there was a number of people, which is what they're claiming, that are having a problem with the carnivore diet, there's lots of things that we certainly do to help with that, and we troubleshoot it in the community, and we get people where they need to go. But if you were trying to really state claim that there is such a thing going on, then I find the way that it's being done to be very suspect, because it's kind of a mocking tone. They're laughing at people who believe that you don't need carbs. They're saying that by asking questions such as, saying you never did the diet, so how can you say that you had problems with it? How can you say that this other person had problems with it who had such a lot of dairy in it? Just by asking very straightforward troubleshooting questions to check whether or not this is even passes the sniff test, is met with a very defensive reaction. And I think that
Science
tells
studies show
rubbish. Personal attacks, I've been personally attacked and body shamed, all this kind of stuff is going on, rather than having a substantive dialogue, which they won't do. They will listen to this today and he'll go out and put the same reel out tomorrow saying the same thing, even though you have said very clearly what the different pathways are and what needs to happen for cortisol to be raised, for muscle to be catabolized.
Right.
So there is no conversation.
Right.
So
And let's actually prove that point right here and right now. Okay. Zayn Griggs, if you're not watching, I'm sure you'll be advised by others who are watching. So there's no excuse. I didn't see it. Yes, you did. Zayn Griggs, I'm speaking to you personally right now. Come and debate this with me live, face-to-face on my YouTube channel, where, by the way, I have a much larger audience than you do on YouTube. So it's in your interest to do it if you are really interested in being a social media influencer. It's also in your interest to do it if you are at all confident that what you have to say is correct, valid, or of utility to anybody whatsoever. That is your challenge, Zayn Griggs. Come and face me face to face any day you like, twice on Sundays. And I will tear you 7 new assholes. Okay?
You're not making it that tempting.
Yeah. So there it is, basically. And what we will get from Zayn Griggs on that.
A new reel. Sorry.
A new reel tomorrow. Yeah.
He'll do that dad bod.
He might do the James de Nicolantonio thing. Bart is wrong! Bart is wrong! Bart is wrong! He'll probably do that. Yeah. Anyway, there it is.
And the other thing that comes through very clearly, like, again, a big sign that these people are not trying to help people, is that apparently there is no such thing as like sugar addiction, and people need to just get on and eat fruit, because if they can't eat fruit and not fall off the wagon, then that means that they haven't cured their addiction. So the best way to cure it is to just eat the fruit. So this is some kind of twisted logic. And in my charity, the Public Health Collaboration, we have a lot of research going on into food addiction. And one of the main things that we help people with on food addiction is to say, where are you at? Do you find certain things triggering? And that is going to be very personal to you and your experience and your background and how you went through a food journey. That is what is relevant to whether or not something could be triggering to you. That means that you will fall off the wagon or not. And it's not a line that some person draws and says, you have to go and eat fruit, otherwise there's something wrong with you. So I just wanted to kind of put that one out there. It was even like the other day, drinking out of a cup, saying carb addict on it and laughing, pretending that he was a carb addict. This kind of shaming, mocking people who have these issues, I find absolutely disgusting. That is not somebody who's trying to actually help people. Okay, even if you think they haven't got a real food addiction or a real carb addiction, because it doesn't exist, you don't mock people. That's not going to get them to your message, and that's not going to help anybody. So that just tells me a little bit more about the motivations going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting to see Rob Goodwin mentioned here. Rob is a personal friend of mine, I'd like to think. Certainly we are well acquainted. We've spoken many times on videos together. We've shared views on various different things. Rob Goodwin is one of these who is of the opinion that while carbohydrate intake is not required, as I've correctly stated, that he believes it to be an optimizing factor in certain aspects of hypertrophy training, bodybuilding, those kind of things. He is a very successful former competitive bodybuilder, and I think he actually still does compete at masters level from time to time, just to make the point. I disagree entirely with Rob on this. I don't think carbs will optimize anything, actually, anything of any value or use to anybody. Rob has told me straight to my face he couldn't give a rip-roaring exactly what anybody else's views are on it. He's done his N equals 1 and he believes it to be an optimization thing. Well, fine, that's, you know, he's entitled to that opinion, but others of us are entitled to say we think he's wrong in that regard. In the same way that I'm saying to Zayn Griggs, you're wrong, mate. Yeah. Only I'm being a bit more confrontational with Zane. But
plastic trophies, meaning you're not really, your muscles may look bulkier, but that doesn't mean that you're any stronger.
That's right, and I think Rob is well aware of that a largely hypertrophied bodybuilder is not someone who you would equate as being healthy necessarily. In fact, most of the things that bodybuilders undertake in order to achieve the physiques that they achieve are actually the furthest thing from healthy just about you could come across. And I know that Jonathan is in the chat, Jonathan Griffiths is in the chat right now. He's a massive bodybuilder. He will tell you exactly the same. The stuff those guys do is daft, health-wise, long-term.
Yeah. But this is the idea of what, this is what tells me, again, it comes from an industry, because that's what someone in an industry would think looks healthy. And so they will find someone like him and tell him to get his top off. And really, that to me is not healthy. That is not, that doesn't look right to me. So,
pose physique. Do you even lift, bro? You know,
we're trying to help people cure diseases and feel their best, and they don't have to look like that to have longevity. In fact, longevity comes from another set of factors than what they're parading around. So I would very much contest that is a picture of health. Please don't be fooled by it.
Yes, no. If you take the average lifespan of hypertrophy athletes, bodybuilders over a certain weight class, that you will find that their life expectancy is, not great actually, because of all the other stuff. Our good friend Lame Norton getting a mention as well. Lame Norton, who can't even correctly state the first law of thermodynamics, let alone apply it appropriately. Lame Norton, who, by the way, after the thing came out with Dr. Mike Imbecile about his PhD, number one, being a dissertation and not a thesis, so that's not a PhD. Apparently in America you can get a PhD by doing a dissertation and some coursework. That is not a PhD, folks. A PhD is a 4 or 5 year program of full-time research engagement under the training of an experienced PhD supervisor. Okay? So a little dinky dissertation does not class you as a valid PhD holder in my world. Secondly, Mike Imbecile's PhD was absolutely appalling in terms of errors and stuff that was just physically impossible, numbers that could not possibly have been collected, cut and paste errors, grammatical, dreadful. Okay, I thought, out of all of that, I wonder what Lame Norton's dissertation looks like, because he's another one that did a dissertation and some coursework. Lame Norton, who purports to be an expert in human nutrition, his little dissertation was done on ratus, not Homo sapiens sapiens. So he's not an expert in human nutrition. Neither is he an expert in anything, because he didn't undertake a 4 or 5 year program of full-time research under the supervision of an experienced PhD supervisor. He did a dinky little dissertation and some coursework where they failed to teach him the first law of thermodynamics or how to apply it. So anyway, I'm going to do a video on that at some point when I get around to it. But I just
please do.
Since that was brought up, I thought I'd just remind everybody that I'm working on that, among other things. I'm also working on my new offering on my Patreon membership site, where you'll get access over there to my course on how to read the literature. When someone waves a paper in front of you and says, here, look, here's a paper that absolutely proves X, Y, or Z, that you'll be able to go pew, pew, and shoot holes in it without breaking your sweat. $10 a month for access to that. A couple of cups of coffee. I think it's awesome. Especially considering folks like not really a doctor, Paul Sellard, I don't know, charges $1,000 an hour or part thereof to tell you to pour carbohydrates down your neck. Another one I think has been tarred with the old funding brush there. I don't know, but...
So, but I have a question. So,
Please,
what are your views on another thing that is talked about a lot by Zayn Griggs is the use of peptides, and what do you think of those? And also growth hormones. I think he takes both of those, and that probably explains some of the physiological shapes that we were talking about.
Sure, probably does. I personally have experience only with one peptide that I personally used, and found it to be very effective in what it was supposed to do, and it did exactly what it said it was supposed to do, and that is BPC157, Bravo Polly Charlie 157, which is a short 13 amino acid peptide, which is made naturally by the stomach enteric cells, and it then washes and sluices through the digestive tract, and it does magics in terms of gut function. And it's also very effective in dealing with the acute phase of soft tissue injuries, like systemically around the body. So I found that one to be effective. I don't have any experience personally using other peptides. I don't suggest them to others except for BPC157 in cases where I think it might be useful. And even then I say, look, this is experimental, not for human use. It's very, very dangerous. So dangerous you can buy it from eBay or Amazon. That's how dangerous it is. Nonetheless, I'm not telling you to take it or suggesting you take it. I'm just saying it's available, and here's what it supposes that it does. I've used it myself. It did what it said it was going to do for me. You do you. That's how I roll. Certainly in terms of the things that bodybuilders usually stack up to try and get their hypertrophy maximized, I wouldn't touch any of those things with a barge pole at all, personally.
Excellent. Good to know.
Cool. All right. All right. What's happening in the chat? We've got a bit...
I don't know, lots, and I can't keep up with it.
Yeah, no, I can't either. It's good. It means there's interest in this topic, which is, a very good thing. No, I disagree, Hugo. Raw is not necessarily best at all. We've been cooking our meat over fires for 1 million years. More than 1 million years. We are well adapted to eating cooked meat.
Is he talking about dairy?
If you talk about raw dairy being best, that's a different story. It may or may not be. Yep. Cool. Very good. Nicely done. Thanks for the catch on that, Olivia. I can't keep up with the chat any more than others. Yeah, raw milk. There you go. Fair enough. Not raw meat. Yes, absolutely. My bad. But yes, whether or not raw dairy is better than pasteurized, the jury's out. There's no actual research. It's fine to have an opinion. Yeah. Why do I get asked this every... Is this a joke, Jonathan? You know damn well I get asked this every single live stream.
What is that?
Dear. This is the guy who calls himself Goatus, otherwise known as Spherier, which he spells with a 3. He's an imbecile, basically. An imbecile who presents himself as being remotely credible and says big words, but is nonetheless an imbecile. This is a bloke who genuinely believes the earth is flat. Staring directly at the sun is a good idea. That being the most extreme version of carnivore possible is the best. That if you eat cooked meat, you are no better than a slave. He says things like salt is rock. This is the kind of level, Also, there are all sorts of allegations about this particular character in his past, including serious assault on female partner, apparently, allegedly, and being a bit stabby as a high school student. A bit stabby, apparently. Not someone that you should probably take seriously in any way, shape, or form, I would suggest. Here it is.
Okay, so another question for you, Bart. If part of the argument, again, that comes out is, just so people can hear your view on it, is that we really only had these chronic diseases in the last 50 years, right? And it's when seed oils came along and made it all really bad. And before that, we were just perfectly fine. And so let's go back to just getting rid of seed oils. It's not the carb, it's the seed oils. So how would you...
I would absolutely support the notion that seed oils, all oils derived from plants, whether it's the seed or not actually, concentrated, bottled in plastic bottles and left on the shelves of supermarkets, whatever, I would get those all gone from the human food chain. I would get them all gone yesterday. I think they are the absolute worst thing that was ever put into the human food chain. Vastly worse than carbohydrates, yes. That does not absolve carbohydrates from the problems that carbohydrates themselves can cause. And not all carbohydrates are equal in terms of their problematic nature as well. So yes, there is some validity in that statement. Oh, look, the carbs aren't the worst issue here. You're right, they're not. Seed oils absolutely are. Plant-based oils absolutely are the worst thing you can consume. Yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that, as I said, that doesn't mean carbohydrates are absolved. They are still guilty of lesser crimes. And the requirement in human nutrition for exogenous carbohydrates from the diet is still the same as it was when we began this 43 minutes ago. And that is none. None at all. Yes. So,
but depends if you want to go back to the health of 50 years ago or want to go back to the health that we are able to reach as a species. That's the difference, right? Full health or
sorry, repeat that. You broke up. Yeah, I missed a few.
The difference between those two things that you just said is like, do we want to go back to the health that people had 50 years ago before seed oils, or do we want to go back to the optimal health that our species can experience, which is also getting rid of the carbs? You know, that's the kind of distinction that's being drawn. We shouldn't just settle for something because 50 years ago it happened to be there. We should be trying to find our optimal way of being, right?
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so it looks like Jonathan is clearly taking piss today. He knows damn well that you can't eat calories. It's a physical impossibility. There is no way to consume calories. Cannot be done. Jonathan knows that. He's teasing me. That's another question I get every single live stream. What do you think of Dr. Jack Kruse, though? Which I should put him on the list of people I refuse to answer questions about. I'll do it one more time, after which I won't do it anymore. 50% of everything that comes out of Jack Kruse's mouth is demonstrably incorrect. Jack Kruse, I have spoken to several times face-to-face. We've made several videos together. I have respect for Jack in terms of what he's doing and the way he's doing it in terms of its efficacy of making himself seem to be very credible in a given field. Sadly, he is not. And it's all about ego, actually, with Jack. It's nothing really to do with... It's also about being seen to be the man in a given field. Well, I'm sorry, Jack, I do understand quite a bit about the kind of physics that you talk about. I have trained up in that, and half of everything you've said about it is wrong. I'll give you an example. The single worst egregious crime that Jack Kruse has made against society, I believe, is repeatedly stating that he believes light to be more important for human health than diet. Well, Jack, that is fundamentally ridiculous. That's daft. It's wrong. It's demonstrably wrong. N equals 2. You versus me. Okay, we're not matched pairs twins. It's not a scientific thing, but let's look at two individuals. One who eats a largely correct diet. I'm not perfect. I never said I was. And one of us who eats a very, very poor diet, patently. One of whom doesn't really take care of the light thing strongly, and one who does. The one who takes care of the light thing strongly, he believes, but doesn't look after his diet, is corpulent, means fat, unwell, patently, and one of us isn't so much. Anyway, take from that what you will. And this is also another joke, because that's another person I'm asked about every single live stream, and I've already said I will not answer that question again, so I won't. Anyone that wants to know my thoughts on Arjuna's Vonda planets can watch any one of my live streams over the last 7 years, because it gets asked every single time for some reason. That's another question I get asked often. Why can't I find your academic background? You can, Jonathan, and you know that. Okay, you're teasing me again. You actually can find my academic background if you know how to find it. What I have done is made it difficult for the layperson to find my employment history without doing some detective work. Why? Because that's the way I like it. I am no longer working in academia. I have no pride in any of the institutions I worked in that 20-year career, because all of them had the same issues, the same problems, the systemic problems that academia has. And frankly, I wouldn't want to be associated with any of them, let alone promote any of them. So I keep that to myself. I've asked every former employer to take down any reference to me from their sites, as is my absolute right under the Privacy Act of all of these various different countries that I worked in. I've actually been in academia on 4 different continents over a 20-year period. But if you want to find out about my academic background, you actually can, if you know what to do and how to find it. You know that too, though. You're just teasing me.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
There was an actual question from someone, not
Okay.
Jonathan. I think it's Stu Menders was saying, where is he now? I can't find it. Would you use fiber for someone who's estrogen dominant? I think was the question for a female.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't. No. If the estrogen
To enable them to
level
excrete
is...
estrogen via fiber.
No, because that's a symptomatic relief technique in the same way that allopathic medicinal practices to mask a disease by dealing with the symptoms rather than by sorting out what caused the disease in the first place, or the dysfunction or the distress, whatever it is. So if someone is estrogen dominant and that is a problem for that person, then well, let's get to the bottom of why that is and sort that out. Feeding someone fiber, which will probably mess up their gut function, if anything, it's not the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Sarah Zaldivar has been, even as recently as this morning, posting videos where her guest is Zayn Griggs, and they're talking about how important carbs are and how carbs, she even said carbs will turn you into a super athlete. Absolute nonsense.
And she talks about a dopamine, a dopamine issue and like a body set point. Can you explain any of that? Does that any make sense to you?
At the end of the day, one of the things that occurs in the human body when you undertake all sorts of addictive behaviours is that you get a dopamine response by doing that, including carbohydrates. Is that a good thing? Depends on how often you do carbohydrates. It used to be, back in the day, when we were cave people, that carbs were a rare treat. They weren't available to us. We couldn't get them. So we had them once in a blue moon. So therefore there's a dopamine response to that to reinforce that, so that next time carbs became available, we could take advantage of that. Nonetheless, we're adapted by positive and negative selection pressures over an extended period of millennia to gain our nutrition from animals, the flesh and fat of animals, almost entirely. And we are designed to consume almost no carbohydrates. And in fact, we can consume none at all and still be perfectly healthy. I say that with a bit of a caveat, though, because muscle meat contains some carbohydrate inherently.
Yeah.
It says 0 on the label purely because it's less than 1 per 100. It's a very, very small amount, but it actually is there because muscles contain carbohydrate. So there it is. Yeah.
So, Bart, what would you say to someone who has been listening to all of this and listening to people like Zane and Sarah, and it makes sense to them because they are maybe not getting all the benefits they used to get, or they're gaining weight, or something is maybe not as good as it used to be? What would your advice be to them as to how to address that if it's not bringing carbs back in? Right.
Trust me, I am the science. Don't question the science. I'm safe and effective me. Don't listen to anybody else because I'm right and everybody else is wrong. I'm kidding a little bit. Just a little bit. Look, absolutely listen widely to folks, but learn how to critically evaluate what is being said to you for correctness, veracity, consistently with objective reality. Consistency with objective reality, if that's not what I said. Okay? To learn those skills, if you don't have them, join my Patreon for the cost of a couple of cups of coffee a month, because on a week-by-week basis, I've already started to roll out the course on how to do that, basically. Yeah, absolutely. It's the thing about people and their opinions is, I mean, I've said it very often, that opinions are just like anal orifices, aren't they? Almost everybody's got one, and it's almost certainly full of shit. Basically.
Yeah. I was thinking more about an individual. Say an individual's been gaining weight. What would you tell who's been on the carnivore diet long term? So therefore these messages are starting to resonate with them. What would you advise them to do to address that the correct way?
So the first question I would ask is, when a person says they're gaining weight, what do they mean by that?
I'm assuming body fat.
Right, so that's an assumption. We would need to find out whether or not that is correct, is the first thing, because it might be that they've lost a stone of body fat and put on 1.1 stone of muscle, which is a definite win, isn't it? Absolutely, that's a win. And yet they stand on a scale and they're 0.1 stone heavier. Oh, this is not working. This is terrible. I'm gaining weight on the carnivore diet. So let's get it, a spade is a spade, and if someone is gaining fat, that's what they're doing. Let's talk about that. So are you gaining fat? Great. How was that measured? How do you know? Is my next question. If it's really, really obvious, unmistakable, great, okay. How much protein are you eating? Is my next question. How much fat are you eating? Is my next question after that. It's a systemic, you go through a series of the most common causes of problem and eliminate them. It's like it's a differential diagnosis, really. And eventually you hit on what the problem probably is, and you go to that person, that's what your problem is probably. You did it wrong, you never really were a carnivore, hand in your card and report for public naming and shaming. That last bit's a joke for those of you that didn't get it, but goodness sake.
Well, we find there's a lot of dairy and sweeteners at the first call. If you find any of that, then get rid of that. Are you under eating, which is very common? People change their appetite when they move to carnivore. Are you fasting too much? That's a really common one, which could really slow your metabolism down. What is your sleep and stress like? I think those are the biggest ones. If you can get all of those nailed, then you are very unlikely to still have a problem. Yeah.
All right, Stephen, good to see you, mate. We love us some Stephen up in here. He's awesome. Yeah.
We do. All these Brits.
Brits are great. I love Brits. I'm very Anglo-centric myself. I can't help it. I love you Americans too, and other Europeans. You're not bad. My partner's a European, so they must be okay. Animal fibre is okay for some people. There's no such thing as animal fibre. Fibre refers to the indigestible or semi-digestible carbohydrate strands. Yeah. Hello, Andrew, by the way. Yeah. I didn't see that was you. I just worked it out. Andrew Scarborough, good to see you, mate.
Another Brit.
Hey, Scarby. Another Brit, yeah. Carbs are great for sumo. Good. Love it. All right.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, thank you for everything.
No, thank you, Olivia, for bringing it to my attention. And I made a video about Zane being an imbecile a few weeks back, which he didn't respond to because he's so brave and manly, really. Or maybe it's because I'm completely, lacking in credibility and I just make shit up. Well, tell you what, Zane, just another reminder, you've got an opportunity to come and prove it publicly, live, so it can't be edited. Come on my YouTube channel live and prove me to be an idiot.
And Bart will be awesome. Really, really nice. Bart will be really nice.
Oh, I will. I'll be polite to your face if you need me to be. You just tell me up front before we go online, hey, I'd prefer it if you're just really polite, which I will. I can drop the act a bit and we can just do the science. And you'll still end up with more orifices than you started with. Doesn't matter. I don't have to be rude to you to tear you new ones because I've got the science behind me. I'm the science, me. I'm safe and effective. Trust the science. Don't question the science, even though that's exactly how you do science. Yeah.
Well,
all right.
Never know what happened.
All right. So awesome. We better get off because I've got another thing at the top of the hour. It's been really good, Olivia. Great to see you.
You too.
I love your work. I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. Hold the faith. Don't listen to idiots, basically. And everybody else that's in the chat, thank you for being here. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for taking piss out of me, Jonathan. Love you. Nothing you can do about it. And we'll see you next time when probably someone will be wrong on the interwebs because there's a lot of that going around. Yep. Good stuff. All right then. Ciao for
Bye.
now.
Take care. Cheers. Bye.
All right. See you.